Hello.
Hello, are we on?
This is new. All right.
This is very new. Yeah, there we are. I'm Nicola. This is Mitch.
Hello.
We're the Owlbear Rodeo team. We're very excited. We're very nervous this morning. Thank you everyone who's already online for joining us, and especially those who in odd time zones. It's 10 a.m. here, but I know for some of you it's probably like almost midnight. So essentially today we're going to go through Owlbear Rodeo 2.0 and the improvements over like Owlbear Rodeo 1 as it exists today. Essentially we're going to go through some questions that were submitted on Patreon afterwards. If you're over on Patreon viewing, it'll be much easier for us if you come over to YouTube and ask any questions you might have there. Mitch is going to walk us through everything. I'll kind of... we'll leave questions to the end. I don't want to... Mitch is very nervous and he doesn't want to... I don't want to interrupt his flow. Mitch, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, let's get into it. All right. So... Owlbear Rodeo 2.0, massive changes. Basically, we got to kind of a year and a half of dev time with 1.0, and it really wasn't kind of scaling for us. So we kind of threw everything out the window and decided to start again with kind of everything that we knew we wanted our virtual tabletop to be.
Kind of throw the whole kitchen sink if we could at the like see what sticks for us best.
So here we have 2.0. This is the main screen. It's called a room now, where you exist. In the room we have our scene, which is this kind of grid here. This is a big departure from 1.0 where everything was based off of maps. So maps was kind of the top layer of everything. That had a lot of limitations because you could only have a single map per game. Whereas now you can kind of have multiple maps, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So this scene here is a grid. It's an infinite grid, so we can kind of zoom out and we have as much space as we need to work with. So that's really cool. In terms of UI, in the top left here, we have our party list. So this is all the players that are connected. We can change our name if we wanted to. And then also each person has a color. This color is pretty important. It kind of determines your selection indicators, the color of your pointer, just a lot of things that kind of indicate who is who. Okay, next up we have the toolbar on the right hand side. So here we can see we have familiar tools to 1.0. We have move, selection, fog, drawing, ruler, pointer, and text tool. Pretty much all of these have been completely revamped, so we'll get into those in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most familiar part of the interface from 1.0, but everything has been rebuilt, and Mitch has spent a lot of time rethinking like the internal designs and everything like that. Yeah.
All right. The next bit of the UI we can look at is the dock here. So in 1.0 we kind of had this token bar on the right hand side. It's now moved down to the bottom, which gives us a lot more room to have things like search, and also to kind of spread things out so that logically we can kind of separate the different types of images that Owlbear Rodeo supports. So the first thing you'll notice with the dock is that we have tabs here. So each tab represents different types of images. So we have maps, props, mounts, characters, attachments, and notes. And we'll do a deep dive into all of these in a little bit. But that's a really cool system we found because it's really intuitive to kind of figure out what my images should do. And then also having this kind of specific category allows us to treat these images in kind of in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
Next thing with the dock you can search. So we have a search button here. It's something that people have really wanted in 1.0. You can also use a shortcut, so Control K. And it kind of means that adding tokens can be a lot more efficient.
Yeah. I didn't mention before, but I think we should put a disclaimer. Some of these things are still works in progress, and we will, and probably we already did when we're running through this, come across a couple bugs. But obviously we'll do our best to avoid them.
Next, on the right hand side, you can see all your images by clicking here or using the shortcut. So here you have kind of a grid view of all the kind of images that you can kind of manage and change. You can also change the category here as well if you wanted. This is definitely a section that is definitely a work in progress.
You got it.
So a lot of this is subject to change. Okay. Next in the UI is a setting screen that I'm pretty pumped about. It's the scene controls here. So here in Owlbear Rodeo 1, a lot of the options to control things like the grid and the measurements were on the maps themselves. And so that led to this thing where in order to kind of change the grid on the fly, I would need to go into the map settings, go a few layers deep, and then I would find where I could do all that. It led to a lot of things where people didn't know those settings even existed. It was kind of a pain to do it in real time when your players were kind of in the map. So here we've kind of taken this philosophy of bringing the controls forward. So here we can change the grid color. So I can turn it to black. Obviously it's a black on black, so you can't really see it.
It's very difficult to see, yeah.
But I can change it just by clicking that.
And yes, opacity is in there. I can see people are very excited about it.
So if the grid's too much, you can lower it down or turn it off, or you can make it a lot brighter. Grid type, I can pretty easily change between the different hex types or the square types just by clicking here. And then we have a few line types as well, just because I think this dotted line it looks pretty cool. It's very kind of paper-like, and I like that kind of aesthetic. Okay, the grid size, this is for measurements. So here each grid tile is set to a length of 5 feet. I could set that to 10 feet. I could set that to 1.5 meters for metric system. I could set it to 1 mile. We can it's a similar system to 1.0, but everything's kind of brought forward.
Yeah, I think that was a huge part of the redesign, was essentially pulling all these things we kind of had hidden within menus and kind of weren't super intuitive, or they weren't in your face enough that people knew they existed just by interacting with the UI. They had to go to documentation or ask us in person, and it was very difficult for us to try to explain where these settings lived.
Yeah.
So now we've kind of just made sure we've pulled everything up to make it much more intuitive and much faster to kind of pick up.
Yeah. One of the last things in the grid controls, you can change the measurement type. So you can do normal D&D rules, or you can do 3.5 rules or Pathfinder rules with this kind of alternating measurements. So I'm going to stick this to kind of the defaults here. But the next thing we could do as well is we have these scene controls. So this, we'll go over these a little bit more in the future, but I can click reset view, and here it'll kind of take me back to the original view of the scene. People have been wanting this because a lot of the times you can kind of get lost or not know where you are. And that's especially important when we have this with this infinite grid. Here we have this sync view button, so I can toggle that on. We won't see anything here, but once you have multiple players, because I have set sync view to true, now my viewport will be synced automatically to everyone else who's connected. So that's a really cool tool for if you're playing with people who maybe be maybe are getting used to the interface and kind of can struggle to move around, or if you're playing on maybe a physical tabletop and you have a TV screen kind of laid out, you can have your GM screen with your GM view, and you can just toggle just toggle sync view, and then it'll kind of automatically spread out to all your players.
Yeah, or you can be confident that what the screen on the table is seeing is the same as the one you're seeing. Yeah.
Okay, that's the UI. All right, now.
Yeah, and sync view was very commonly requested in Owlbear Rodeo 1.0.
Yeah, yes. It just took a lot of work. A lot of the underpinnings of 2.0 is this network syncing system, which allows for real-time changes to be synced with other players. And so this kind of builds on top of that. Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's go with maps. Maps first. That's kind of the first thing you probably want to do once you have a scene. Here I have a few default maps that I've made and a few other maps I've loaded in for kind of demo purposes. But I'm going to just click and drag this ocean map here. I love my oceans.
Yeah, he's very proud of this map. He spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah, I'm not a designer, and so it took me quite a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so once I've dragged a map onto the scene, I can move it around just like any other image. It'll kind of snap to the grid here, so I can kind of set it up how I like it. One of the first things that once you have your map in position, you'll probably want to lock it. And so what that does is it means that now instead of dragging about the map, it is instead locked in place. And so I don't accidentally select it or my players don't accidentally select it as well. So in order to kind of reselect a locked map, I can just double click here, and now it's selected again. So the really cool thing about 2.0 is we have an infinite grid. So now we have infinite maps. So I can copy this map, I can paste it here, and then I can simply just drag it here to the right. And now we have an ocean that's doubly wide.
And Mitch has made a lot of effort to try to make the default maps tileable. So they kind of look like one map once you put them next to each other.
Yeah, so the default maps are kind of fully tileable and repeatable. So I can kind of continue pasting and kind of dragging this map about, and there should be very little seams into the actual design. So you can kind of just keep on building. Okay. So
yeah. And I guess, sorry, going to chat, like the multiple maps was again coming back to the inspiration of making it feel like an actual table in a physical room where you could have multiple maps on one table, which is kind of where we got this scene kind of thing. Yeah.
The other thing with having this kind of maps as just regular images is that we aren't limited to having one type of map. So here I can import this galleon from 2 Minute Tabletop, and because this is loaded as a map, it'll actually show underneath the grid here. And so that's something that people have wanted to have before, where they've wanted to have like ships or like different pieces of the kind of scenery, but they still wanted their grid to be on top of it. And so this allows that, because now we have our ocean here, and then we have our ship, and our ship can move on top of our ocean.
Forgot to lock that one.
Probably should have locked that one.
Yeah.
Our ship can move on top of our ocean here, and everything kind of just works like that.
Yeah, and I guess it's very good for people with those assets, because then it kind of makes it appear more part of the map.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people were like, people can spot straight away that door is a secret door because it's above the grid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So next, we can look at some characters. Let's do that. So I'll just chuck this ship here. I'm going to lock it just for a sec. All right. So here we have the characters. We have very similar characters to 1.0, the same kind of design. We could search here. So if I wanted to, I could try and find my barbarian, and I can drag that in, or we can just kind of use the kind of search here. I can not search, but like the actual normal view. Okay, I'm going to grab barbarian. I'm going to grab a bard. I'm going to grab
cleric.
Cleric. You play a cleric. All right.
I play cleric. That's why I'm very adamant about it.
Okay. So we can select a character here, and we see a similar kind of context menu as we saw with the maps. Let's kind of go through it piece by piece. So here we have the option to hide the token, so I can click that here, and then it'll become kind of semi-transparent. For the DM, it'll be semi-transparent, and for the player, it'll be completely hidden. It's very similar to 1.0 in that regard. In the next thing that kind of is very different from 1.0 is our new text editing system. So here I could edit the text here by clicking this button, or I can click enter on my keyboard, and now I can just simply enter just simply enter text as it is in the UI. And so in 1.0, you kind of needed to do it in these kind of pop-up menus, but now whatever we enter kind of on the map itself is exactly what we see. So that's really cool. There is a few things we have with this kind of more advanced text controls. We can now change the color if we wanted to. We have some font size controls here. And we also have our new kind of inbuilt emoji picker. So here, I'm going to use a frequently used emoji axe. It's from the demo.
It's from the demo. It's not anything suspicious.
From practicing.
Yeah.
So now that adds a lot of useful things, because we saw people in the community a lot of times would use emoji for like status effects and things like that. So here, instead of having to remember the inbuilt kind of emoji shortcut, which is, I don't remember on Windows.
On your, it's
control space or something.
It's like Windows key dot.
Windows key.
I remember the Windows one. I never remember the Mac one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so just having an inbuilt emoji picker makes things like that easier. It also means that you can build up a frequently used list of emojis that's specific to Owlbear Rodeo. So if you have kind of specific emojis you always use for these different types of status effects, that they'll always be there. Okay, so that's labels on characters.
Yeah, thank you, chat, for validating us about the axe emoji.
Yeah.
And the Windows key.
Okay, so the next thing let's go over is attachments. So this is a system we designed in 1.0. It was pretty cool. There was a lot of positive kind of feedback to it, that people were using it in all these cool ways to add status effects and things like that. So we've kind of revamped it completely to be extremely flexible in 2.0. So here I'm going to grab a status ring, a concentration ring that you might use these when you're doing playing kind of in person, where you kind of chuck like maybe a status effect on one of your minis. So it's a similar idea here, where we have this status of concentration that we're going to attach to one of our characters. In 1.0, things tried to be magical, and you kind of just placed it and it was supposed to just work, but it didn't always just work. So here we have more of a manual system.
We made it less of a black box. Like I think we've done it for a few things. Like we've tried to not try to make things simple by doing things for you.
Yeah,
I think is
just making things kind of predictable.
Yes.
Okay, so now I have this concentration token. Because it's labeled as an attachment here, it'll always be on top of these characters no matter what. And that's one thing that I guess I haven't really gone over before, but all these tabs here, maps, props, mounts, characters, attachments, and notes, they are actually ordered in the way the layering works in the system. So maps are the very bottom layer and notes are the very top in terms of images, and then attachments, characters, it kind of goes up the scale like that. So this is cool because it means that our attachments are always going to be layered above our characters no matter what, which means that you don't really have to do a lot of the busy work in kind of managing those layers. Okay, onto attachments. So to attach this concentration token to the barbarian, all I have to do is click attach here, and I get a little attachment handle or line which tells me where I'm attaching to.
And sorry, is the red because that's the color of your
so it's red because that's me, because
yes.
that's what my color is. So if I would change that to blue, it would be blue.
Yeah.
So in order to attach it to the barbarian, a little pop-up just comes up and says you're going to attach this to the barbarian. I'm just going to click, and that is now attached. So now wherever I move this barbarian, the concentration ring will move as well.
Yeah.
So this works for rotation as well as scaling. So they're kind of attached side by side.
Yep.
So what I would probably do is now move this attachment ring onto the character, and now they kind of move along with each other. So this is really cool. The main way that this kind of works in 2.0, it didn't work in 1.0, is because we now allow selections for tokens to be kind of pixel accurate. And so what I mean by that is that here we have this ring here, and I can, if I select in the middle of the ring, I don't actually select the image. Instead, I select whatever's behind it. Whereas if I select one on the actual pixels of this transparent image, then I can move the ring. And so this helps us in that if I move this ring on top of this barbarian, I will now be moving the barbarian instead of the ring. So attachments are really cool, but they're not just limited to status effects. One sec.
You're going great.
So we have status effects. We could use that, but we also had a system in 1.0 called mounts, and that was designed for things like horses or carts or ships, where things will kind of automatically move with whatever's above the mount. Here, the attachment system is flexible enough to replace that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to unlock this galleon, this ship, and then I'm going to select the bard, and then in 2.0 now I can just simply shift select the barbarian and shift select the cleric. And we know we have these three selected because their names have kind of appeared here at the bottom. And now in order to attach these to the ship, I can just simply attach them, and now it'll show me I want to attach it to the galleon. I click, and now they're attached. So here we have this kind of chain of attachments. So when I move this ship, all the people on the ship will move with it. And then if I wanted to move these characters individually, I can kind of just pull them and move them around. And then even because it's a chain of attachments, if I move this barbarian, the barbarian will also move the concentration token. So here it's a really flexible system where you can kind of keep on chaining these attachments down and build up this kind of almost physical representation of where these tokens are. So in a real world, if we had all the characters on the ship, it's kind of intuitive that, when you move the ship, the characters will move. So this is a kind of system that we can build up with this kind of new attachments workflow.
And I guess you should probably touch on that you can only attach something to like a layer below it. Like it's like a one. You can't have the barbarian attached to, say, the galleon and to another
galleon. So attachment system, I can attach it to one thing at a time. So it's more of a chain of attachments and not like this
One
kind
to
of
many,
spreading tree or
yes.
anything like that. Yeah.
And I guess if you lose track of what it's attached to, you can always detach it and then attach it to something again if you need to.
And that's a UI thing as well. I'm kind of aware that sometimes you might forget what things are attached to, so I'm planning to look into solutions where maybe we have like a little text here saying what's attached to it.
Yeah, without giving you like a lot of information. Yeah.
So here, if we wanted to keep on going further, I could, if I wanted to, unlock this map, and then I could attach the galleon to the map as well. So then we move the map and it moves everything with it as well. So you can kind of just keep on going with this kind of attachment system. It's pretty neat. Okay, I'm going to lock the map again. I'm going to lock the ship just so I don't accidentally move them. The next thing we can look at is props. So here I have a kind of wall of fire by 2 minute tabletop that I'm going to drop down. If we wanted to, we could also, now that this is here, we could attach that to this galleon as long as we unlock it. And then this will move with the ship as well. We could, if we wanted to, for somehow, I don't know, the wall of fire might be attached to a player. I don't know, it's a weird spell, maybe you could do that. And so now when we move the bard here, this wall of fire also moves. So maybe we have some kind of ring that moves with them.
Yep.
And because we have said that this is a prop, the layering automatically takes into account how it should work with characters. So when I'm moving this bard here, you'll notice that this wall of fire still remains underneath the barbarian. And so this is pretty cool because the actual layering here is kind of handled for us. And so this is something that is different if we went for maybe like a grouping control where maybe you shift select a bunch of tokens and then group them together and then they can move at once. The problem we ran into if we were doing that is that once you group a bunch of tokens, they generally would stay on a single layer. Whereas here with this attachment system, all the individual tokens remain on their layers. So we can do things like this, where we have this wall of fire that's always going to be underneath our characters, no matter where we attach it to.
Yeah.
The other cool thing about attachments versus groups is that generally when you have a grouping system, by default you would select the group, and then to get to the individual images underneath it, you would need to actually kind of go into that group and then select those individual images. So here, because there's not a one group of images, we can just simply select like kind of individual items in this grouping automatically.
Yeah.
All right, that's a lot to do with attachments. How are we going with time? I think we're all right.
I mean, I think we're going all right. There is still a bit to get through as well. So
let's get into it.
Yeah. I will answer a brief question at the moment around the attachments. You can't attach, say, when we had the example earlier with the barbarian attaching to the ocean, you can't then attach the ocean to the barbarian.
Yeah.
You can't have this circular relationship.
Yeah.
That's more of a limitation we've purposely put in because if anyone is technical, circular dependencies are not fun to.
Yeah, it creates an infinite loop of movement. If one item moves another item and that item moves the first item, then you're always kind of moving for forever.
Yes, we have thought of that. So you can only attach once you attach something to something, that thing can't then attach to another something else. Yes, like the same thing that it got attached to. Yeah.
All right. So let's go into notes. Notes in 1.0 was we had a notes tool and you could create notes. It was neat. I like it. It's not very flexible, and we get a lot of emails about people being like, "Oh, can this be more flexible?" So,
and notes are limiting. Like, I want my note to do this. And yeah.
So in 2.0, we've kind of redesigned the entire system of notes. Instead of a note tool, notes are now images. So this is really neat because now I have a bunch of my notes in the dock here that I can drag. By default, we have kind of our sticky notes here. But we can imagine that in the future, we might provide, or people will make community notes where instead of having the backing of the note be just yellow sticky note, it could be like a tent image with character informations that people can fill in. It could be a sort of character sheet. I don't want to say character sheets, but it could be that kind of inspired design.
Yeah, we know some people do like having character sheets on the VTT. Yeah. It's not our personal preference, and we're kind of like hesitant about it only because we're worried. But yeah.
So once I've dragged a note into a parchment note. Yeah, if you wanted to style the notes to fit your kind of theme. But once I've dragged the
especially
note,
for other VTTs, I guess. Yeah. Tabletop games like futuristic, space ones exactly. And stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. So once I've dragged the note, I can just double click it and we're in a text editor. So here, our text editor, this is kind of rich text, so it's a lot more kind of advanced than we saw in the token labels. So here, I can do a heading here. We support Markdown shortcuts, so I can just use like double hash to do a H2, to do a subhead. I can do paragraphs. I could style things. So here I've just done like a normal paragraph, but I can bold, italicize, underline that. And we also have lists, so I could do like one and do this kind of list, and we
like
can kind
a numbered list or a bullet list if you wanted.
Yeah, and we can kind of keep on building up on that. We also have the font style, so perhaps maybe I want this a lot smaller, and
font size.
Font size.
Yes, yeah.
And then I can make this kind of a massive note if I wanted, but we kind of didn't want to. We kind of want to release the note system. So before it was kind of pretty bare bones.
Kind of if I'm going to go for a word, and don't be
simplistic.
Insulted. I was going to say opinionated, I guess, in the way we wanted it to be used, which yes, which ended up with, I guess, people kind of felt constrained by it, and understandably, yeah.
Okay. So here, another cool thing that with notes is that they also fit into the same system as normal images. So if we wanted, we could hide a note and do hidden notes. We could lock it. We can also attach it. So if I attach this note to the bard, it'll kind of move along with it. So if you wanted to, you could have attached hidden notes for kind of like maybe stats or something if you wanted.
For like an encounter, or you just need to remember something that only you, as the DM, need to know, or even if for your players, I guess, if they needed to remember something particular, but the character, they don't want to establish it onto the map because there's a lot going on or something. Yep.
Okay, so let's move on to tools. We've kind of gone over most of the image types. I think this leads naturally onto the new tools.
Yep.
The first tool I want to look at is kind of an extension of this. It's the text tool. So here I can enable the text tool, and now I get a little text indicator. I can click anywhere on the map and just start writing text. And then this text is now available on the map. I can move it to anywhere I want. I can change the color. I can do whatever I want with this text. It's also fully customizable in terms of rich text as well. So we could do headings, subheadings, emoji, those kind of things. Because this text system is also the same system as images, if we wanted to have text that is doesn't have a background, then we can still attach this to something like the Bard.
The Bard's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I think this is kind of a lot more flexible. In 1.0, you were able to like turn notes into this like there's no background note, and it was still kind of limiting. So having this kind of infinite kind of free text is really gonna make things a lot more free to kind of do whatever you want.
And having part of the tool kind of makes it like super available as well.
Exactly.
That way you don't have to worry about importing it. I'm sure if we didn't have it, people would import some sort of transparent background, which would be the note image, and work around it anyway. So we may as well just make it available.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing with the text tool is if I click on an empty space, overwrite text, but if I click on a text thing that's already there, like a note, I can just start editing it. So it's really handy if I want to say, okay, I just want to edit this barbarian. I can just double click on that, or I can double click on this kind of note here, and you can kind of really easily edit kind of any text. So it becomes pretty much a tool to kind of edit any text that is on the page. Okay, so that's a lot of text. Let's move on to drawings. Drawings, another thing that's been kind of heavily reworked. We have here similar drawing tools to 1.0, but we have a few more options. The first one we're going to look at is the marker. So this kind of emulates kind of a whiteboard marker that allows you to kind of draw just lines, kind of freeform like this.
And you can see at the moment that while Mitch is drawing, it kind of looks purple, and it's because it's taking on the color of his...
Yeah, it's a little odd. It's taking on my color,
which is red,
and overlaying it on top of the color I've chosen. So when I deselect it,
it's kind of actually the blue which you drew it with.
It's kind of how we handle selection indicators for drawings.
Yes.
And that's a new thing, selection indicators.
But we'll go over that in a bit, yeah.
Drawings can now be selected, and they can actually be moved, which is something, a very big limitation in 1.0 is having kind of static drawings. But now, because drawings follow the same system as everything else, they can be moved, and they could also be attached. So if I wanted to draw a circle around this bard and keep on attaching to him, now he has attached drawing, which is really neat. Okay. Moving on to the few more tools, we have the line tool, we have rectangles, we can draw rectangles, we have circles, which we just saw, triangles for that, and then we have a new hexagon tool, which...
you got to show them, put it to a hex map.
Yeah, so people really want a hexagon tool because when you're using hex maps, drawing hexagons is a pain. Now it is super easy to draw hexagons, so we can kind of just fill it out however we want, like this. So that's really cool.
And I guess this is very useful as well if you do have auras and that kind of thing, and you don't have a particular attachment token that you just like, I forgot to put that in there, especially for your player. It's much more easy for them to just draw a circle and then attach it to the character.
Yeah. Next thing, we have a lot more control over color in 2.0. So here I have a background color. I can adjust the opacity however I want. So I can make maybe a 50% transparent blue that I kind of share across both the background color here and the stroke color. And now if I draw my rectangle, it's kind of semi-transparent. Colors also have, we've seen this a little bit before, but there's a big enhancement in the color picker. Here we have our default colors. We now have a brown and a green, which is actually turns out very important for a fantasy setting.
Especially if you're outside.
Yeah. But if these colors are too limiting, we also now have a custom color picker.
And that's if you really want to dial in your color.
Yes. So here I can select maybe this orange or something, and then just click OK. And now we have a new brown. Well, it's a bit too much like the other brown.
I was like,
It's not really an orange. Let's go.
make it a Pikachu yellow or something.
Pikachu yellow. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Now we have this big bright yellow. So now when we draw, we take on that color.
Yeah. I hope Nintendo doesn't come after us.
Yeah, hopefully not. So this is cool. The color picker kind of saved colors are shared across all the tools. So here I've made my favorite yellow. I can select that as the stroke and the background. We could also turn our color into a custom color as our player. And this color kind of is available across kind of the entire UI. All right, that is the new drawing tool. I'm going to take a drink before we get into the fog tool. Anything to say, Nicola?
I did see something briefly in the chat, and it's not quite a question, but I guess you have, I think, spoken to me about it before, about a color dropper in the color select about, and I'm sure people probably want you kind of addressed why it's not there at the moment. Was there a technical difficulty?
A color dropper, as in
yes,
like an eyedropper?
Yeah, like an eyedropper to choose, like you say, I drop my map in and I want the color of my drawing to be pretty much exactly that one, but I don't want to have to manually do it. Like, what about an eyedropper?
Yeah, it's possible. It's something we could definitely look into. I haven't personally looked into it before. It'd probably be a bit of a lift, but not like super crazy. But
yeah.
Look into that.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into.
Sorry, before Mitch goes on, I am gathering your questions as it's going on. So even though we're not maybe answering your question immediately, we'll try to get to it after Mitch has gone through his presentation, I guess.
Okay, so. The next big change is fog. Fog has been completely reworked. So here we have a new fog tool in order to complement the infinite grid. We now have an infinite fog. So here, in order to add fog to my scene, I click the add fog button up here, and now the entire scene is fogged. We can see that by enabling the preview. So here is what the players will see, and here is what the DM will see. So we can kind of prove it's infinite by we can keep on scrolling out, and it's just in the entire screen is kind of blank. So now that we have fog on our scene, we can now cut from that fog. So we have tools that are similar to the drawing tools. That allow you to define shapes that will be cut out. So here, if I wanted to do a polygon here that I'm cutting out, I can just kind of click and add kind of a straight edge polygon. It's really cool. So now we can cut out from the fog. If I enable the preview, you can see we have this little kind of window which players can see. If I wanted to move this shape, I can now move the fog shape, which is something we couldn't do in 1.0, but now we support it. If I wanted to have this shape instead of cut out, I want it to instead add back to the fog, I can then hide the shape, which is a little unintuitive, but like we are hiding the cutout, which is showing the fog. A little bit of a reverse thing.
Yeah, when we're going through the demo yesterday, we're like, how do we word this? Exactly. Yeah.
So the fog, we can show it, and then we could lock it as well if you wanted. So we could maybe cut out this kind of window, and then if we wanted to have a circle here that we instead reveal the fog, we can have this kind of multi-layered approach where we can have kind of things that are cut out in like a broad shape, and then you can kind of do little shapes kind of in there. I have seen in the chat that someone said, can we attach?
Yeah, I was like, you got to show them. You got to show them.
So we can, in fact. Now fog is at the same system as drawings, in fact.
Don't leave the poor Bart alone, maybe.
No, we're attaching it. Someone also said earlier, how many attachments can we do?
We have not tested this, yes.
Okay, so now this bard has a circle fog shape that's attached to them. So when I move this around, the fog will move around with them. So to see that better, I'm just going to put this preview on. So now I can kind of move this around. Is this useful? I don't know. Well, it remains to be seen. I haven't used it in a game yet, but you could definitely see... you could definitely see this being used in a pseudo dynamic fog situation where perhaps you have a torch or something.
Yeah, or dark vision. I can see someone say dark vision. We should address dynamic fog.
So I'm really happy with this fog tool. I think this is extremely flexible. Obviously, this isn't setting up walls and it's not doing dynamic line of sight and things like that. I think that kind of dynamic line of sight doesn't really fit into my or even Nicola's vision of what Owlbear Rodeo should be. But this tool has been created in such a way that that dynamic fog should definitely be possible. And we'll get into this a little bit further down in the stream, but we plan in 2.0 to have a pretty extensive plugin system where third-party developers can make their own extensions to Owlbear Rodeo. And so this system has been designed to be extremely intuitive for kind of Owlbear Rodeo users, but then if a third party wants to come along and create a dynamic fog of war system that's built on top of what we kind of already have here, it should definitely be possible.
Yeah, I think with Owlbear Rodeo 1.0, when we built that, essentially that was very informed with how we played, Dungeons and Dragons. But obviously, with releasing it to other people and gaining traction with a lot of people, we wanted in 2.0 to kind of pull up everything, kind of make it much more flexible. And just because we don't see personal value in dynamic lighting and dynamic fog and that kind of thing, it doesn't mean that other people don't. So we wanted people to be able to create plugins and, extend the core system to fit how they play the game, because some people have happy with just core functionality. Other people want a little bit more advanced things like different kinds of fonts or So 2.0 was very much about trying to accommodate for people who wanted to build on top of what was already there.
Okay, so continuing on with what's available in the fog system, we can use kind of just dynamic brushes like this. We have a rectangle tool. We have circles. We've gone over that a little bit. Triangle, fog cutouts, and hexagons, which is another cool addition for those using hex maps, because now I can finally cut out hexagons like this. And then
and I did see someone in chat was asking about the hex drawings and if I can do it in fog. Yeah, you can.
Yes. So it makes hex a lot easier to work with fog of war. Okay, great. So let's see here. I'm going to do back to square grids. The last thing with fog of war is actually this is something that's been suggested a few times, and something that we support now is fog colors.
Fog color, yep.
So here, if I wanted to blind everyone, I could do
yellow.
a yellow.
Yeah.
I could maybe do a purple fog color. So here,
oh my gosh, that's
it's bright,
yep.
but maybe you want it. Maybe that kind of fits into your kind of world.
Maybe you want to be able to really tell what's fog and what's not fog. I guess it's great for Great for if you have trouble with contrast, because sometimes I do.
I'm going to set this back to black though, so I don't blind people in chat. All right, great. So that is fog. I'm going to clear it just so we have a little bit more of a clear UI to work with now. Okay. Next thing to look at is the new ruler tool. This one is cool. It's changed a lot. We have a new design. We have a new kind of implementation. And I think it's really neat. I think it's probably not complete. I think there's a few more things we need to look at in order to make sure that the experience is kind of great with it. But we're going to show here anyway. So now when using a ruler, we can kind of just drag and see our measurements here. So here, this barbarian can probably move actually 40 feet because it's a barbarian. So here now, once I've kind of added this ruler to the scene, very much like maybe a physical tabletop. Let me just make sure I lock the scaling so I can move around. This ruler is now in the scene, and so I can drag my barbarian here to the end of the ruler, and then when I'm done with the ruler, I can just click it and hit the delete key on the keyboard to delete it. I think this is a really cool kind of way. It solves a lot of problems we had with 1.0 where people would use a ruler and then kind of forget where the endpoint was, and then it kind of defeats the purpose of the ruler. So keeping it around allows us to kind of solve this problem. A lot of people want this kind of to be a one-stop shop movement and ruler tool. I think that's a good idea and something that I want to look into. There's a few technical things I need to kind of figure out in the back end kind of on how to do that, but it's something that I could definitely see being kind of expanded upon this current system. The other thing with this ruler tool is it is synced with all the players, so your DM will be able to see this measurement and kind of yay or nay it if maybe you're trying to go through a wall or something.
Or like a rough terrain or something like that. Exactly. It just kind of helps with communication between, especially if you are using it in a fully remote capacity as well.
Okay.
The
last tool we're looking at is the pointer tool. So on the surface, not much has changed here, but we have a full new system, and so I think this leads kind of naturally onto the new real-time syncing engine of 2.0. How are we going for time? Yeah, okay, we're right.
We're an hour in. We're right for time.
So here I'm going to add another player. So here I have, you can't see that good because it's a URL. I'm going to add an incognito tab here to add a second player to here. So here Nicola has joined the game. And so I'm just going to split these screens 50-50 here. So now in our new 2.0 network architecture, we have a real-time network syncing system that we've developed for this. So the first thing first, we have a real-time pointer. And here on the player screen on the left, you can see the pointer, and on the other person's screen on the right, we can see who belongs to that pointer. So here it says Mitch is using that pointer, and it's in the red color that they chose. This also is cool because now the pointer is expanded in that we have the pointer here on the right hand side, and now if I move off the screen, it'll actually give us a little indicator as to where this pointer is kind of off the screen. And
so for the Nicola view, say, I can tell that Mitch is pointing somewhere I'm not looking at.
Exactly. So this was a problem we had a lot with the original design of 1.0 where people would use the laser pointer and it wasn't very functional unless everyone was looking at the exact same spot. So here, even if I'm kind of pointing to somewhere where I'm not even looking at, I know kind of where to move my viewport to kind of see.
And I guess this is where sync view comes into play that we showed earlier, in case you really need to show everyone in the party, for example, where something is.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a huge part of it. because a lot of people were like, I love the pointer tool, but my player got lost and I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And especially now we have the infinite
Grid.
you can definitely get lost. Yes.
Infinitely more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing with the real-time syncing system is it's not just the pointer, it is everything. Okay. So this is pretty cool. If I move this barbarian token, the player on the right-hand side will move automatically, and it'll be completely real-time synced. This is also the case for rotations. If I rotate this character, it's real time. Scale is also real time. This is the same for attachments. So even this guy has a lot of attachments. This is fully real time synced. We also support real time syncing of drawings. So here, if I use this marker tool to do, let's say, a yellow line here, this is fully real time as well. So you can kind of see the drawing as it's being done, which is really handy for kind of calling things out as they're happening. So it's a really cool system that really brings this sense of kind of awareness to kind of what your players are doing at all times, which kind of makes the job like a lot easier as kind of a GM or a DM, because you can no longer are kind of blinded by what your players are doing kind of as they're doing it.
And it's useful for players too to be able to exactly communicate what they're trying to, what they're interacting with or establishing.
Yeah, especially for things like the ruler tool here. So the ruler's synced in real time. So before I even commit to kind of where I want to go, the DM can see exactly, oh, I'm trying to actually jump over a wall here that the player hasn't noticed. And then they can kind of veto it and kind of do it in kind of real time.
Yeah, or for example, when you were using the fog cutout earlier.
Yeah, let's do that. So if I add fog here and then on this player side, I'm going to simulate a player view. So here I might cut out a circle here, and you can see the fog cutout is actually real time as well. But if I wanted to do that attachment here, where I attach this fog shape to this barbarian, as I move it around, this is fully real time as well. So this actually solves a lot of problems that people have with dynamic fog of war systems, in that
you can click on it, you can drag ahead on the map, and then move your token back, and then release, and then your DM doesn't even know that you've looked ahead.
On things that are kind of client side like that, you can kind of cheat by like faking the token movement on your client and then kind of putting it back to where it was at the start, and you would be able to kind of see what's in the next room without anyone really knowing.
Yeah.
So this kind of system addresses that, which is really neat.
Yeah. Do we have anything else?
Real-time syncing, fog, that's it for my demo. All right.
So we'll go into Q&A now, I guess, and thank you as well. It has been going for an hour, and especially if you are in a particular time zone. Thank you for sticking around this long. So we'll go through the questions that were submitted on Patreon. I've also been gathering questions as the chat's been going. Maybe we should get into the first question, because I think that a lot of people have been asking about dice.
Yeah, sure. I'll just quickly put this back to just a single view so we have a little bit more room. Okay. Dice. So Gerald and Indy asked on Patreon.
And there were some people in chat as well asking about Mark. I have seen your questions, Mark Walters. Don't worry, we'll be addressing that. Yeah. So
the general consensus from the Patreon thing was what's happening with dice, where is there going to be the ability to do multiple dice sets at one time, different mixing colors, more color options, presets, things like that.
Different systems.
Yeah,
yes.
The short answer is yes, and the long answer is It's complicated. Let's get into it. So in designing 2.0, we looked at our massive kind of list of requirements for what kind of users wanted with dice. That included things like new dice sets. It included dice colors. It included mixing dice sets. It included kind of macros and things like that. Adding dice modifiers. It also included different dice systems, maybe HeroQuest, maybe Genesis, or kind of narrative dice. Fudge.
Yeah, Fudge is a big one we get requests for since we introduced it. Yeah,
we kind of looked at these requirements, and I set out kind of designing this system, and it started to get like really complicated, like extremely kind of unwieldy. So the solution I've come up with is that instead of trying to support all systems, we will support just D20 systems in the form of a plugin. And so basically this has a lot of benefits. We can provide a first party dice plugin, which means that it'll be similar to 1.0 with like kind of this 3D physics simulated dice tray.
If you've seen one of the earliest designs we put out on Patreon, kind of gives a brief like a screenshot of what would that look like. Essentially, it would be under like Mitch's name if he's sharing dice to you.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so this kind of dice system, we're going to design it to have a lot more improvements. It's going to be real time. There's going to be dice sets and things like that. But it will be just kind of traditional D20 style dice. And this is going to be offered as a first party plugin, which means that internally our plugin system is going to have to be great because we're going to be using it. So it'll allow us to kind of smooth all the kind of corners of this plugin system and make sure that it's versatile enough to support something as complicated as kind of a 3D dice system. And then it'll also mean that if you don't want dice because maybe you already have a dice system somewhere else, or you like rolling physically, you can just completely remove dice from your version of Owlbear Rodeo. The other cool thing about this and what we plan to do is that the dice we create for 2.0 will actually be open. So we plan to make this as a plugin that we create that is actually open to the community to use as a reference for what they want. So because of this, we can kind of provide this kind of reference design of this is how a D20 dice system is made, and here's the code on how it was made. And then we can give that to the community for them to add their own stylings, add their own different kind of dice kind of colors or like dice like logos and things like that if they wanted. And I think that's a really cool, flexible way for us to create an extremely good D20 system and then rely on people who are kind of passionate about different systems to then kind of use our reference design and kind of build off of that. Yeah. I think that's a good solution because things like Genesis, I haven't really played Genesis a lot, so if I was to do a Genesis system, I would probably get it wrong and do it badly. So it'll be really nice to have someone who's really passionate about that system kind of work on it.
Yeah, and there are some practical benefits for others as well who aren't using dice. We probably get faster load times and there's less kind of static files to load and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then because this is our 3D dice system, and this is kind of what we want, it also leaves the door open for if people want to just have a 2D dice roller with text input, that's something that they could create as well and offer that as a plugin that's kind of separate from ours.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into, I guess, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, Chimico's question around, with so many combat-focused RPGs, will there be a way in the future to do macros/plugin for damage, rolls, and life bars? I love your work, a smiley face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so macros, plugins, those kind of things definitely
Yeah.
is something that I want to see from the community. It's probably not something that I will use personally because I'm very minimalistic in my design and in my kind of use.
And we like to hear the dice go click clack in real life. Yeah.
Okay. We have a few more questions. Okay, so in terms of Patreon questions, Christoph asked about the attachment system in terms of stacking and movements. And they mentioned that in 1.0, when you move an attachment, things get reset to the order that they were added to the scene. That's a bug. I didn't know about it, but it is a bug.
Sorry about that.
But it is fixed in 2.0. I think we've kind of gone over this a little bit.
Yeah, we fixed it by rebuilding the whole thing.
But these attachments will always maintain their order in which they were before they were moved.
And we have, I guess, since it's kind of related, we've had a few questions on how things on the same layer interact with each other. So how do you decide what token goes on top? What kind of fog shape goes on top?
Yeah, so it's a similar system to 1.0 where we have these kind of fixed layer groups of these kind of semantic understanding of what this token is. And then in between those layer groups, it's determined by whatever was kind of moved latest.
Yeah, and who interacted with last kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Multiple maps on the same table, different floors of elevation. We've kind of gone through that a little bit with this kind of this boat and things like that. So I think that's
and
good.
tiling the ocean maps. Essentially, you can drop multiple. Sorry. You can drop different floors.
Okay.
We don't have that exact example, but yeah, you can drop like different floors onto the one scene.
Andrew asked on Patreon, please include as much detail about the support for animated maps and graphics. Okay, yeah, let's do it. This is a big one. It is early, so it might not work. It should work, but we'll see. We now in 2.0 support the importing of videos as MP4s or WebM and as GIFs for kind of images. So here I have a version of Wave Echo Cave that I created and kind of bastardized for my players.
It was one of his first ones. It was so good. You should have been there. Like, it was a great presentation. And sorry for any spoilers as well.
Yeah, so this section doesn't actually exist on the Wave Echo Cave, so I'll just show this because... but this is a WebM video that's playing. It is just playing back in real time. There's a few things to note with animated content. The actual rendering in Owlbear Rodeo is very efficient in that we only re-render the scene when things change. So it means that it's really good on battery life on things like laptops and phones. With animated maps, we can't do that. So when the content is animated like this, we have to refresh the content as much as possible to kind of show the animation. So animated maps do use a lot more battery life, but if that's not a concern, they're pretty cool. In terms of resolution, this video is stupid. It's a map that I made to kind of play locally, so it's not designed to be sent over the network. So this isn't actually an 8K video. Should you make your maps, animated maps, 8K? No. Probably not.
Please don't do that. You and your players will not enjoy it trying to load that.
So it's a big file. It's probably it's kind of more of a benchmark or a stress test for us. But in terms of kind of performance in the system, it shouldn't really cause any slowdown. So here I could do similar things as we've done before. I could add a character. I could do the classic fog trick that kind of looks cool. where I can attach this fog shape to this construct here. And now I could kind of do the fog. And so animated maps, in terms of kind of the user input and design, it doesn't actually change much at all. It's pretty much just this content is animated and you shouldn't have to do anything else on your end to kind of get that to work. Cool. I think someone else asked about in the Patreon questions about animated content. It'll be interesting to do like walk cycles and fighting cycles and things like that. And they mentioned themselves that kind of this probably goes against Owlbear Rodio's kind of design philosophy. And yeah, I agree with that. I think in terms of animated content, I think this is probably as far as we're going to go, where we just say, okay, if you put a video or if you put a token that's animated, if you put like an animated fireball or something, then we'll play that animation back and support that. But anything kind of further than that will be more in the plugins realm.
Yeah.
Animated spell effects tokens would work the same, right? Yes, exactly. So if you had an animated fireball as a GIF, that'll work just the same.
Speaking around attachments, maybe briefly, we have some questions from, I guess we kind of were answering this during the stream. Sir Hardhead, have you found any limitations how many things you can attach to one thing? We don't know, I guess is the answer.
It's not something I've tested thoroughly.
Yes.
But
maybe it's something we'll introduce soft or hard limits. I don't know.
Not at this stage.
Yeah.
We'll definitely look more into it as we kind of get closer to kind of launch times.
Yes, and Pablo Peneas, sorry if I'm butchering the name. What happens if you copy paste something with attachments? Do they get copied too?
Yes.
That's a very good question because I haven't thought of it.
No, not at the moment. So it's something, I could definitely add, but at the moment, the attachments will stay to the original thing. Unless you kind of do a shift and like select the attachment as well, then it would get copied.
Yes, and I guess I did see a question as well. But hello, Pablo. Do you support transparency in animated maps?
Yeah, so it depends on the file format. So MP4 and WebM as a format don't really support transparency. So the one animated format we support that does have transparency is a GIF. So you get the benefits of transparency, but you get the downsides of GIF, which is kind of like lower quality or kind of large file sizes for the quality. So WebM, MP4, or GIF are the ones we've tested so far. Once we get closer to kind of launch and we can actually put more time into kind of the individual testing, we'll definitely look into the other formats. Something like WebP is another pretty common format. It's something we could support in the future, possibly. It is very hard for us to support it.
I think Mitch has opinions about WebP.
It's great, yeah. It's just the current web kind of technology we're using is very limited in its support for WebP files.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have more questions from Patreon, or I can?
I got some from Discord if we want.
Oh yeah. I don't mind either way.
There was one question about from Several Record about GIFs. GIF in the dev blog is about rotating multiple tokens at once. So I think what they meant is that if I do like a multi-select here, where I select, let's see, here and here, yeah. If I select these three tokens and I kind of rotate the middle one, they're all kind of rotated around the token. Their question was, could we possibly have an option where instead of doing rotation around the middle, that they all kind of rotate independently of themselves and kind of stay in place instead of moving as well? It's possible. It's something that we could add, but I think in terms of simplicity, I think this is a nice design. One one thing that we didn't show in the GIF is that this kind of anchor point for the rotation is actually based on what token you select. So here I can actually rotate everything around the cleric here, or I could rotate everything around the blood hunter here. There's kind of a little bit of freedom there. Yeah, but I think in terms of simplicity, maybe we'll leave it like this for now.
Just since we're touching on tokens, I have a question from Federico Totti. Any chance to make specific custom tokens available in player libraries? So let's say the wizard could manage his fireball template by himself.
Yeah, it's something that we're kind of looking at the moment. So we're kind of, at the moment, this is kind of just running more locally, and we're looking at all the player things about, having kind of custom tokens and things like that. And the storage paradigms we're using for 2.0 are going to be different. So we're kind of looking at all that kind of at the moment.
And Christoph, you asked, are tokens still per user, or can a token I upload be seen by other players?
Yeah, that's a similar thing. We're kind of we're looking at it now, and we're kind of thinking about how that will be
how that will work. Yes. And since you brought up storage, I've had a few questions around exports. Will scenes still be exportable to files? So I think someone else had a server record, 7234 emoji and color picker history saved in backups and exports.
So a lot of these, the settings like your colors and the kind of your tool options are saved kind of just locally in a really kind of small kind of save file. All the persistent stuff in terms of backups and exports and all that, that's what we're going to look at next. So this is the next thing that we're kind of exploring.
Yeah, especially because we've had quite a few, issues with local systems and that kind of thing, and we're trying to remove as much friction as possible, especially concerning, I feel like in Owlbear Rodeo 1.0, it's a little bit of a fight to kind of educate and let people know about local storage, because it's not the traditional, I guess now everything is about the cloud. And so we're trying to configure things in a way that, a user shouldn't have to know exactly how, how their maps and stuff are saved and everything like that. But we're exploring everything at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So several record also us in Discord about, is it possible to support different fonts and font systems, font families, I guess is a traditional word. Okay, this is an interesting one in that, let's see here. If we look into kind of our text rendering, we do have a few options, but font family isn't one of them at the moment. This is a constant kind of battle for design for me, is how much do we expose, how complicated do we get for the user compared to keeping things simple and kind of in the philosophy of just a super minimalistic tabletop. So we support multiple font families behind the scenes, and I can actually show that if we wanted to. So I can open up.
We're doing some live coding. Live code in your...
So here I can access the Owlbear Rodeo API.
See, someone mentioned Comic Sans.
Comic Sans, all right. Yeah, I can do Comic Sans if
I mentioned it earlier in the demo, just before this.
So here I'm going to make a new text builder, which is part of our API. And I can do font family. I have Times New Roman here, but we can do Comic Sans. I think it's just Comic Sans. It might be Comic Sans.
I'd say I Google it. But
MS, I believe that's what the actual font is called.
Yeah, and then someone else mentioned Papaya. Y'all are reading my mind.
So here I could change the font family in our API. I could do, we actually support fixed width and fixed height
Yeah.
for text elements in the API compared to like this automatic resizing text. So these are kind of options we have. Actually, I can do. I'll do a text align to the center, and then I can add it to. Yeah, I can add it to the scene. So here I kind of use the API to, let's see here, add this empty text view into the scene. It'll be here because it has no text in it. But now we have this text field that is in
Comic Sans. Yeah.
Yeah, so the API is something that holds a lot of the kind of options and power. Whether we expose that to kind of the general user, it's still something I'm looking into. So the here this font, you can see it's vertically aligned. It's also a fixed width and height, so it does like text wrapping. So you can actually, oops, that's wrong button.
Sorry, y'all.
New keyboard. So you can actually see that it kind of will wrap around the kind of edges here.
Speaking of text, server record 7234. Can you do multi-line text on tokens?
Oh, yeah, you can. So here I can actually, if I wanted to have this as a separate line here, I can just do enter and it'll kind of make this into a different line. Something we support at the moment, it's something that I'm not sure whether we'll keep. Maybe we'll keep. I'm not sure. I think people have been wanting it for a while, so I might keep it in there for at least a while, and we see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll keep it in there for a while, and then destroy your hopes and dreams when we revoke it.
API changes like that, variables per session, or
Or kept.
So here, the API adds to the scene. So what's the shortcut? Command Option I, Control Option I can't remember.
You can just right click on that and then inspect if you want.
Or anything. Okay,
Yeah.
So they are in fact permanent because we're adding kind of to the scene itself. In terms of this is an API that I'm using kind of for development purposes, but when we have plugins, it's because the plugin system will actually be kind of a permanent way to have this kind of as options. Okay. Any other questions? I kind of understand we're running a bit long, but
I have a few more just briefly around. I think we've already touched on Curvy N's question about in OBR 1 I used to prep on a map and can load it afterwards with everything that needs to be there. Does this work with the new system?
Yeah. So that's something, again, that we're working on kind of this month and the next after that, is that being able to, we've kind of made this scene, this kind of ocean, and kind of have this battle map here. If you want to have a different kind of scene where you have maybe a cave or something, multiple scenes and saving them kind of for prepping beforehand or during play is definitely something that we will support, yeah.
And then Pablo Peneas, sorry again, could you make it so the fog circle is on top of the light circle attached to the player? So I guess this was around like kind of dynamic fog, for example. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, I think fog's usually the top.
And yeah, I guess in terms of layering, we do have this specific layering order in Owlbear. At the moment that's kind of fixed for the players, but the API does actually allow you to manually address layers manually. So I could, as a developer, I could make sure that my my tokens sit above the fog all the time. I could make sure that like some things are always at the bottom. You can kind of control that as much as you want as kind of a developer, but as a general user, for kind of simplicity, we kind of keep it this kind of automatically managed state.
And they also ask, can you configure the recenter option to have more or less zoom, less or more zoom?
Yeah, it's possible. At the moment, it's just whatever
preset. Yeah.
Yeah, it's whatever the default is. It's kind of it defaults to Owlbear defaults to kind of 150 pixels per grid cell. So we kind of use that as the base, and then your browser kind of determines what that kind of zoom factor is.
Okay. Nice. I guess kind of around configurations and settings a little. Dice told tales. Are colors from players saved to the host device or the player device? I guess this was around custom colors.
Yeah, so that's all saved in your kind of local settings.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Christoph Yu, can you click the name on the pointer tag off the screen to zoom to where they're pointing? So when we would...
that's a cool idea.
That's a good idea. We do not have that at the moment, but
yeah.
That would be neat.
Yeah, write that down.
Yeah, I'll make note of that.
The one thing as well from Discord is there a way to hide tokens or images before you add them? It's something that we can do currently in this current design. If I edit this barbarian, we can actually see that the new kind of image editor for 2.0 is actually pretty cool. It's very much kind of a replication of the scene itself. So you can change the size here. You can also change whether it's default to hidden or default to locked. So here I kind of made this barbarian hidden by default, and maybe it's a little bit bigger, and now I can save that. So now when I drag the barbarian onto the map, it's kind of hidden and it's larger by default.
Okay, I think there's only a few questions left. Mm-hmm. We have another one from Christoph Yu. API changes like the variables per session, or are they kept? I think we already answered that. Sorry, I forgot to remove it from my list. Are there any more questions from your end on the Discord? Or?
No, I think I've kind of gone over most of them, I think.
Okay, and then I guess the final real question we have, which would probably a nice way to kind of wrap it up, by Quazillionaire. Maybe this info is available somewhere else, but do you have an approximate release window, or are you still fully in development mode?
Yeah.
That's the quazillion dollar question. Yeah.
Okay. So we have an internal deadline. I've kind of shared that a little in Discord. I probably shouldn't have, because we might be a little late on that. I'm working as hard as I can. We're doing a lot of design here. Once we ship Kenku FM, which is this month, it'll free up maybe 50% of my time to work more on Owlbear Rodeo, so we should see some more progress then. The current, I guess, takeaway is it'll be ready in months, not years. So we definitely see the release window coming up in the next 1 to 3 months.
Yeah, I guess it's something to keep in mind as well. I'm the only one who's full-time on this, essentially, and Mitch is still, got a day job, essentially. And he's the one doing most of the front-end work, which is so we're working on that. And I guess we chose an internal date to try to coincide with the Owlbear birthday essentially, which is coming up, but we're probably gonna miss that.
Yeah.
But we're working really hard, and it really helps to have everyone here and to keep us motivated. And we'll still be showing stuff. Maybe we'll do another one of these again in the future, and hopefully we can release this into some sort of beta for patrons and that kind of thing, so people can click around and actually interact with it, rather than us just showing you this local kind of version.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a good time, exactly an hour and a half. We're right on the money.
We need a lot.
How many Patreon supporters?
We do not even have enough for me to really be full time.
Yeah,
I have savings that we're kind of It's covering our running costs, and it's really helped with any sort of costs we need to kind of be legit, essentially.
Business expenses.
Business expenses. We couldn't have done this without all the Patreon supporters, because the whole setup was quite a bit. Thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate you joining, especially we know Australia is an odd time zone. There's no good place for anyone. We'll see you around, I guess, and happy gaming.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.